A Year in Review. A look back at an assortment of wildflowers and botanical wonders encountered this year. First and foremost, thank you once again for the opportunity to present here. I had a wonderful time presenting last time, and I hope for the same this evening. This slideshow will showcase many of my interesting findings from this year. Wildflowers, some mosses, ferns, and anything of botanical beauty that I thought were unique and worth highlighting. I'll delve into greater detail with these plants and foes and provide some interesting information about them and some insight to why I think they're neat. This season held many adventures and showed many more new plant species in addition to what's already familiar. Many unique spots were discovered and visited, one very familiar to many of the members here, revealing something new with almost every step. I hope this slideshow will be informative, but most importantly, entertaining. Let's begin. Now, usually when the snow melts, this is one of the first things we can expect to see in the wetlands. And this is a cranberry, particularly a marshberry to be exact. Now, there's a big dimple in it. You can tell it's been sitting there for a while. They say the best time to eat these is now, but I've never tried them to be honest. Next, here's some sweet gale. After the snow usually is completely gone, I'll start going on my major adventures. And this is one of the big things I'll see first. If you look closely in these blue circles, you'll see some resinous glands. These are pretty sticky, but more importantly, they smell quite nice, actually. I don't know how long they stay on the plant. I think they're there until the end, to be honest. Next, we have some gold thread leaves. These are evergreen. These I see sparsely in the bogs. They're more, I'm not sure which habitat they prefer, but I see them usually on the edges of wetland areas. Next, here's some more sweet gale. On the left, these are the male catkins. These are about fully bloomed. But on the right, the female ones, obviously, they're much more showy. Look at the red in them. This one's under a hand lens. These pics are from May, actually, by the way, but I just have them here to keep them grouped together, the plant. Here's a close-up, another hand lens picture of the male sweet gale catkin. This one's fully bloomed. You can see the glands here too, actually. Now here's a black crowberry. These, I had a very hard time getting a picture of these, both on this cell phone and my last one, even with the hand lens. In this circle here, these are the male structures. Next, these are the female ones. Very, very, very inconspicuous. This is a fungus, or a lichen, actually. I don't know what one this is. I thought it was pretty cool, just the way I had the perspective. They look like old orange peel fungus. I don't know if that's them, though. I doubt it. Here's some pussy willows. These are just starting to bloom now on the left, the male ones, and these female ones here, these are in full bloom. Here's a close-up now of that same one. You can see the anthers on the, as they start blooming, they're very peach colored actually. They'll turn into a full yellow by the time they're fully bloomed. Now here's a female one close up under the hand lens. Here's the cotton grass. This pic I think is pretty interesting because you can see the plant by itself instead of like compact around all the other wetland species around it. This one, of course, it hasn't bloomed yet because there's no cottoniness to it. Here's a pitcher plant close up. This is either last year or a couple seasons prior's flower structures on the inside. I'm not sure what these are called, but they look pretty neat. Here's leatherleaf. This is an inside view of the flower. This is an early bloomer. This one's pretty cool, actually. In the summer, or not the summer, the spring and late fall, their leaves, they take on a beautiful color, and they're really leathery. Honestly, I think they look like tongues, of all things. Here's some beaked hazelnut. This is another early bloomer. This I found in the thicket area, which I like to call the valley. There's a lot of flora in there, by the way. Now, these look a lot similar to sweet gale, actually, but they're not even closely related. The ones on the bottom here, these are the male catkins. And on the top, here's another showy one. Oops, get rid of that. These are just males on this branch. There's a couple females around if you look closely, but mostly it's the males taking over this one. This is interesting, or should I say a bit scary. This is a pretty large paw print, actually, about the size of the palm of my hand. You can get an idea. But what concerns me is the size of those claw marks. So I think it's a lynx or something, but I wouldn't want to be there at night either way. And this is the strobilus of a larch tree. This one's really close up. It's actually kind of blurry seeing it blown up here, but they look like little hearts. This is a strobilus, basically is the fertile structure. Think of a flower, but for conifers. This one will eventually fall off. However, the next one here, this one looks more cone-like. This is the one that's going to stay on the tree and become what we know as the cone. Now, one thing I noticed about a lot of these early spring bloomers, the females at least, they all take on a pink hue. I don't know if there's anything specific about that, but I think it's interesting. I don't know why I observed that one. Here's some black crowberries. These are really, really low to the ground, actually. This cliff, it's near my house. It's very, very windswept. Now, I live in Upper Island Cove, probably one of the windiest places outside of St. John's, in my opinion. So these really don't get tall. Here's some gold thread again. This hasn't bloomed all the way, I don't think, and you'll see why I say that in another upcoming picture. These are still very, very pretty. Here's the close-up of a hare's tail. This one, usually when they're not when they're done blooming, but by the time they're fruiting, I believe, they'll look very much like, sorry, like cotton balls. This one's past its prime flowering, but here, this next one, this one's more fresh. This one's under hand lens too, by the way. Next, we have a moss. I think this might be a polytrichum species. I'm not sure, but I'm more than sure that these things on top are the the reproductive structures. And now, here's an interesting segment. A trip to Hawk Hills, courtesy of Sue and Bill Meads. Now, on May 26th, I was honored to be asked to go here, so I said, of course, I have to go. But now, as you can see, the weather was pretty bad, actually. It could have went on a much nicer day. But as soon as we got there was a bunch of stuff to see. This is the first thing I seen, actually. This is the alpine azalea. This might be a very familiar species to a lot of the members here. This one's really close up under the hand lens because they're very, very small, actually. There's some here tucked in this rock, as you can see, but there's next to this, there's a lichen growing in an interesting, like radial configuration, I'll say. I see that quite often, so I don't know if it started growing from the center and moved its way out, but I think it's pretty cool. Sorry. Here's some more alpine azalea. This one's pretty wet, actually. It was really wet, foggy, a lot of RDF. For those who aren't sure what that means, rain, drizzle, fog. It was really gross that day. There's some more here. As you can see in this little area, this one's a fir moss. This one's actually growing up a lot taller than these plants. So that should give you a good idea of how short they really are. Here's the diapinsia. This one's very familiar. This is the one that's in the slideshow intro, actually. Very nice plant, actually. No one else like this because it's in its own plant. I have a couple better pictures of him coming up. Very tiny here, right here, tucked in between the rocks, just to save itself from the wind, basically. Here's a nice cushion, basically, creeped up against the rocks, for I assume the same purpose. This one's really damaged by what I can only imagine is the wind, because it is pretty windy up there, actually. When we were there, it was a bit breezy. But the colors look nice, too. This is early in spring, actually. Here's some more diapinsia, as you can see once again, very wet, but still nothing I wasn't able to get a good picture of, nor enjoy. Here's some old capsules from last year, or maybe the year before. They're persisting on this plant. And as you can see here, these lichens, they're actually growing a lot taller than most of the plants here. Most of these here are the black crowberry, or sorry, no, the pink crowberry, some junipers, and the past two plants I've had. There's a couple club mosses in there. Here's the fir moss, actually. This is the same one in that picture I had previously. These little scaly structures here, these are branchlets. These, last year, they bore the asexual reproductive structures. I'm not sure what they look like when they're fresh, but I'm sure they have a different look. This is another fungal growth. I think this is a jelly fungus or something, to be honest. It feels jelly-like, but I've never seen this very often. It's growing out of a juniper shrub. So I don't know if that fungus associates with this one or what, but it's really creepy looking. Here's the Sitka club moss. Excuse me, sorry. Never seen this one before. I've seen some similar ones, but this one's really nice. It's compact, I find. And here's me. Don't get afraid with this picture. This is the kind of position you'll almost always find myself in. One hand open, one without the gloves so I could take the pictures, and that silver thing here, it's my handy dandy hand lens. This is a candid picture, so I have to thank Sue for this one. And this is the end. When I got home, this is what I saw the next day. The weather was so much better. Here's some sweet gale again. These are the female flowers. Just look how glowing they are, though. They're stuck right out. I had to go and get a picture of it. Now we go to the violets. There's three common violets in my area. I should say violas. This is the only white one out here, the small white violet. The next one is also common, the marsh blue violet. If you look inside, this I think is a good picture actually to demonstrate it. These glandular hairs in here, this is telltale of identifying this species, which is the provincial flower of New Brunswick too, by the way. Next we have the northern bog violet. You might be able to tell right away with this one too. There's no glandular hairs, they're instead tapered. But these three violets, they're all pretty much the exact same in commonness around here. You don't have to look too far to find them actually. Some more leather leaf. These stems are really full of flowers actually. I've never seen them this full. I think it was a pretty good year for them because I've seen them about everywhere. Here's a strawberry. Stamens have all fallen off, so you can only see the female part, so it looks pretty cool. Here's gold thread. You can see these hook-like features up here. They look different and they're more in color than the last one, so this I think is fully in bloom. It's an interesting perspective. The only thing is this petal is out of focus. That's just me being too picky. Here's some chuckly pears. This one's the Bartram's chuckly pear. This is a very early bloomer. This might be familiar with a lot of the people here, especially with the geocenter walks. But this one is easy to identify because its leaves here, they're quite blunt. And the petals here, they're not near as long as the other species. Still have a nice bit of pinkness to them, actually. Next, this is the running chuckly pear. This one's not as common, actually. It's also known as the thicket shadbush, which makes sense because I found it in a thicket area, which is also what I call the valley. It looks just like the smooth chuckly pear, which is also common, minus all the hairs around pretty much every feature, honestly, except for the petals. Here's the Rhodora. This is one of my favorites. This is a very common. I'm sure everyone knows this flower. One of the first pink ones, I think, to bloom, actually, so it's very noticeable, very photogenic. Here's the pin cherry. When these bloom, They're everywhere. It's a shame I can't smell them as much as I would hope to, but they are pretty. Here's the lady slipper. He's starting to nod, getting ready to bloom. Pretty wet, as you can see. It's been very moist and wet this early spring, but then summer came and it was really dry. Haven't seen many of these this year as I did last year, though. And speaking of wet, here's some bunch berries. They still have some greenishness to the bracts because they're not entirely bloomed yet. When they do, they'll get their nice recognizable white. Here's a close-up of this same plant. You can see it's very wet inside because it was recently raining. I think it was raining like not even an hour before that. I'm not sure why I went out that day, to be honest. And here's some three-leaved false Solomon seal. This one's a bog dweller. There's a fungus gnat here doing some pollinating jobs on it. This one's fairly common. He'll make a red berry / berry-like fruit later on. They blend in with marsh berries, but you can identify them because they grow pretty much upright. This is my favorite wetland species of all time. Just look how pretty it is. I don't think it's bloomed entirely either, by the way, because these gold features here, they stick out and they kind of look like crescent moons. The bog bean, by the way, I should name this one. Here's the bog bilberry. This name I don't understand because every time I found it, it was nowhere near a bog. Actually, it was really in the higher areas. This one came from a place that on Google Maps, at least, it says it's called Halfway House. It's between some communication poles, basically between Heart's Content and Victoria. It's in a barrens area, similar to Hawk Hills, actually, but there's no Kalmia nor the diapensia here. You can see it's pretty similar with what they've got. And I have a feeling now this is what Hawk Hills would have looked like on a nicer day, but very, very similar from what I saw up close. Now on another adventure, I went here to some wetland area. Typical, those are my favorite places. And the cuckoo flower showed up. I didn't see many this year, but I blame that on because of how dry it was. The beetle, I assume that is, doing its pollinating job. Here's a close-up. This is a lens photo close-up, actually, of the Canada Mayflower. This one's closely related to the Solomon seal as before, but this one prefers woodland areas. And they're relatively larger overall. Here's a star flower. This one's right under the sun. This one is pretty aptly named, as you can see. This one's another woodland creeper. Here's some of the blue bead lilies. This one, I love this one. It's very, I don't know how to describe the look of it compared to other lilies, but it's very unique. These are actually edible, but only in the early spring. The leaves, they have a very faint cucumber taste. That's very interesting, to be honest with you, for what it is. Now here's some more lady slippers. Obviously, these ones have bloomed. This is a pretty full patch, actually. Haven't seen this populated of a little spot, so I thought I had to take a picture of this one. Next, we have some bog laurel. These are a close-up. You can see a flower has already fallen here. You really get to see behind the petals, or the corolla, I'll call that, basically. These little spurs. Never noticed that before, actually. This is pretty blurry, to be honest with you. But this is a close-up of the inside flowers of bunchberry, the true flowers. They have a nice blackish, very blood red, dark blood red color to them. I like that. I think this is a fire ant, honestly. It's really brown, and from the fire ants I've seen before in the past, it looks really similar. But I'm not an entomologist, so I'll stick to the flowers. Here's a partridge berry, also known as a lingonberry outside of Newfoundland. This one's cool, actually. This is the sweet vernal grass. This one's closely related to the sweetgrass that you'd find associated with indigenous cultures, like with smudging or basket weaving, and it still has the same smell. The only difference, though, the inflorescence, essentially all these flowers, they look quite different. And it's a shame because in Newfoundland, this one's only an introduced species. Here's some more partridge berries. This one's a better picture. I love these because they're really pink on the tops here, and then they start gradually getting white towards the end of the petals. Here's some more chucklery pears, Bartram's chucklery pear. You can see these leaves have gotten much greener now because we're starting to advance well into spring, but the petals have all fallen. But it still looks pretty cool. They look like a flower in and of themselves, these calyces that are left behind. I think that's pretty interesting. Here's the blue bead lily again. This is a better picture of the flowers themselves. You gotta get to see how pretty they are in this one, actually. Here's the choke cherry. This one's just like the pin cherry, but as you can see, they grow more in like a stalk known as a raceme. And when these start fruiting, making their cherries, they'll start to droop down a bit more. So you could really see why they're called pendant racemes, which I think is interesting, comparing interesting contrast to the last two. And the berries are darker, I find. Despite the name, they are actually edible. This is an interesting one. I have a story about this. Last year, I believe I touched about it in the last presentation. This one is the tiny vetch. I found him in New Harbor on a very secluded sandbar. Really hard to get to. I had to climb through, like, honestly 6-foot tall plants, scratch my legs and arms all up in the process to get there. But anyhow, this plant seems to be very stable in its population, persisting there. So I took some specimens after last year having it identified as this to send off to the herbarium in Montreal. Long story short, it's confirmed that it's this ID. So that's really interesting that I got to find him. The area he's in, it's really hard to get to, like I said, so I think that might be why it hasn't been discovered yet, though. But still pretty cool find. Here's the sea sandwort. On the same sandbar, actually, there's a lot of other flora, such as this one. This I haven't seen blooming before, actually, so I was glad to see him then. And the beachhead iris, this is the only plant that was growing on that sandbar. Now, how I identified this one from the other blue flags in the background from the brackish water, it's pretty simple. This one is near the brackish water. This is a better picture of the flower itself. Now, to compare the two, if you look at the beachhead iris, these petals, they're very, very small and short, very inconspicuous. However, on the blue flag, you'll see circled, they're much larger. The color's a bit more rich in this flower too, but I don't know if that's an accurate trait to resemble. Here's some yarrow. These, they grow pink very often, actually, and when they are pink, they're much prettier than their white counterpart. This one's a common roadside weed, but I think it's really pretty. And here's orange hawkweed. This one's very invasive, very much a weed, unfortunately. But one thing I noticed, I don't think I've seen any other dandelion family members that have orange petals or orange inflorescence like this. Very unique. It's very pretty. I gotta be honest. Here's some ghost pipes starting to poke through. Haven't seen any this year other than when they're past their prime, but there were a lot. I think the wetness early on in the season brought them out, but I'm not too sure. The plant that thinks it's a mushroom. Here's some sporophytes of a moss. I don't know what kind. These are on my lawn. Or no, that's a lie. This one's in Carter. Either way, I have these on my lawn too, and they're the most common moss I find. These will eventually release some spores when they're mature, which should be soon. Here's a little squirrel. He had no problem with me taking his picture. Didn't mind at all. He's just sitting there nibbling away on some spruce cones. But then he caught me. Still, he stayed. He wasn't too afraid of me. Let me take a couple pictures, and then I just went on my way. Here's some more bunchberry, actually. These ones, they're not green, despite not being bloomed yet, but they have a nice pink hue. I don't know what that's from, but it's very pretty in my opinion. Twin flower. You guys should recognize this one from the Munn Botanical Garden logo. They're so fragrant. I love this one. They're very small despite how fragrant they are. It doesn't make sense. You could catch a whiff of them, actually, if you're walking up a hill. That's how I found these. Here's some thrips now pollinating a dandelion. Every time, or not a dandelion, a daisy, sorry. Every time I see daisies, there's almost always a bunch of thrips accompanying them. Here's a dragon's mouth orchid. Now this is when the season really starts to begin for me because I love the orchids. I love playing around the bogs, the wetlands, because there's so much interesting things to see. Here's a more pale form of him. He's a bit damaged, but I rarely see these pale forms. Here's some grass pinks. Last year, I only saw one of these, but this year I saw several. I don't know if I was just late for them last year or it was, again, because of the wetness. Still, these are a really pretty one. Here's a raspberry. This one's cool. I like how it turned out, actually. Surprised with the quality. You can see the little anthers on the end here. They look like coffee beans. Light coffee beans, at least. Here's the shining rose. This one really shines through, especially in the fall, actually. I have a picture of that coming up towards the end. So fragrant, of course. Everyone loves rose, I think. And this little guy, got a fright with him. He's not really blue, John, like your other toads, but he's still pretty hidden. He's tucked back into this little burrow, and if it wasn't for me hearing them, I wouldn't have seen him. But it caught me off guard, and I got a little bit of a fright. Here's the sundew now, close up under a hand lens. These were just starting to bloom. They're very small. I have a hard time focusing on these two, to be honest with you, but this one turned out okay. Now, here's a self-heal. This is in the mint family, but this is a face-up, close-up flower. And personally, I think they look a lot like orchids. And speaking of orchids, there's this cool place I found in Harbor Grace, actually. I call it the Bog of Orchids because it's full of them, but it's more or less like a fen, to be honest. I think it's a slope fen. But either way, it's a nice spot. Walking in, the first thing I see are these dwarf shrubs. They're a type of birch. I'm not sure what type they are. I thought they were Betula minor at first, but I could be wrong because I looked at some other plants down in the future and it didn't make sense. So I'm going to try and identify this one later on. Here's a close-up of the leaves. And here's the pogonia. This is another pretty orchid. This one's very common in a lot of the boggy areas I go to as well, actually. Here's some more dragon mouth. These I find are a lot prettier than the pogonias, to be honest with you. But that's just me. This is the most common orchid out here, actually, in my opinion. I see them everywhere. This is the club spur orchid. At the very bottom, you can see a flower face on, and it's actually pretty symmetrical. You got some bilateral symmetry going on there. Now, I'm going to talk some more on this Newfoundland form of the ragged fringed orchid. My last presentation, I touched a little bit on this, but I'm just going to quickly gloss over this because I found some new forms of it this year. This form of orchid appears to be relatively stable among the many possible forms of orchid hybrids that can occur from these three orchid parents: Platanthera lacera, the main ragged fringed orchid, as well as the purple fringed orchid, Platanthera psychotes, and the great purple fringed orchid, Platanthera grandiflora. The ways of hybridization are unclear, though introgression has been observed in these species, a result of hybridation and then repeated backcrossing. Now, with permission from Sue, I took this from her website, this little excerpt, and it pretty much hits the nail on the head right away. Newfoundland plants of Platanthera lacera have a lip that is less fringed than those of typical P. lacera, and have been treated as var terri novi by Lure from 1975. However, he also states that when comparing Newfoundland plants with typical Midwestern plants, they seem sufficiently distinct to constitute a separate species were it not for the transitional forms that occur between them. Now these next few slides, I'm going to show a bit difference. Some blue lines on my screen. I don't know where they are coming from. Now the left, this is the first form I saw last year. This pic's from last year. I don't know if I've seen this one again this year or if I've just seen different forms that look like it. Second one here on the right is the second form I saw. And they're in order too, actually, of when I seen them. I'm not sure if you guys can see these lines on my screen, these blue lines. I didn't add them, and I don't really know how to get rid of them, to be honest. I don't want to mess around either, just in case. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. Either way, there's two more forms here.
Yeah.
Hold on just a moment. There we go. Two more forms. Two more forms. You can see on the left, these are really, really fringy. Actually, this is the closest one to the typical ragged fringed orchid, but still, I think it's a bit different. This is the last form I saw. There's a close-up of the flower in this right panel here, just because it's a bit harder to see. And this is the last orchid from the bog of orchids. It's a close-up of a tiny, fragrant flower. They're very nice, very pretty. I just have to pause here for a sec. I'm sorry to interrupt the slide, but can you guys see these blue lines? I don't know how to get rid of them.
Yeah, Matt, when they Anne's name came up,
Yeah, okay.
so I don't know, Anne, I don't know how, and you probably didn't do it on purpose, but I don't know if that's
See if
where it
might be
came
able to
from.
erase them.
If you want to keep
here we go.
I'm using an iPad that I'm just sitting here. I haven't touched anything, so
Oh.
I'm not sure.
Well, what you just did just removed them.
Yeah, it's gone now.
There we
Okay,
go. Yeah,
and
I just took the eraser tool to them.
Yeah, no, because I'm actually propping this on my knee because it's not comfortable. So I'm
I
sorry,
hear
but I
you.
didn't mean to do anything.
Oh no,
so.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it just wasn't on my screen.
Yeah,
All
sure.
good.
All good. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks,
Found the way
Anne.
out of the bog now. All along the road getting there, fireweed was everywhere, so I had to stop and get a picture of him, of course. And later on, I found a wetland area, of course, Kel Surprise. More stagnant water, though, this time, and found some more cuckoo flower. These ones don't have much of the purple venation, though, I find, as they typically do. This one's new, actually. I think this is a rare species. This one's called the annual sea blight. It's a succulent species. It's in the spinach family, actually, of all things. It's really small. I'd say about half the size of a pop can in height, to be honest with you. But it's pretty interesting because these, I think, are the flowers. They look like they could be flowers. And on that same spot, actually, in Spaniards Bay where I found him, another sandbar, actually. These are really taking up residence, and they seem to be persisting with no problem. These are the gold moss stonecrop. This is common, actually, in gardens, rock gardens, and on the sides of people's houses sometimes, like the driveway. These are close up now. These, I think, are the capsules starting to develop. The stamens, though, the male flower structures, they're still attached. Now, as you can see here, these little gold tufts, that's them, growing all over the place. They have no problem taking over here. Now, later on that day, I think that was the same day, either way, a boggy area I found again, and these were new to me. These bog club mosses. This is Lycopodiella species. I think this is the inundata species. Could be wrong, but what I find cool about these is you see on the top here, they start kind of twirling around themselves. Never seen that in any other type of club mosses.
Yeah, I think that's a pressa.
Okay.
Inundata are quite a lot shorter and stubbier.
Okay, perfect then. Thank you. Now here's in that exact same spot, actually, I found a lot of these water lobelias. These are so pretty. I love these. You'll find these mostly on the edges of ponds and other larger bodies of water. That's at least where I've found most of them. Later on, I went to another area where, wetland, found some of these perfectly ripe bake apples. It's a shame I don't like them because there were quite a few, but I have a feeling some people knew where that spot was, so I don't think they went to waste. In that same bog, I found this. This is the ragged fringed orchid, and this is what I think is what a typical plant should look like, I guess. But you can see they're very much different than the last ones I've showed in the past couple slides. And in that same bog, we have some sphagnum moss. These are the sporophytes. I think these up here recently deposited those spores. They're pretty interesting to look at. This is the white fringed orchid, closely related to the last one, but not in the same family of hybrids, basically. This one's pretty close up. I think he's past his prime because these brown parts, usually they're more yellow. Here's some more club spur orchids, actually. These ones on the right are starting to mature a bit. You can see the capsules are starting to swell a bit more. But these are starting to grow on their side, it looks like, which is weird. And here's the bog aster. Once these started blooming, that's when the bog started looking much, much prettier from afar. Because the orchids, obviously, they're very pretty, but you have to get close up to notice them. This is another thing that sticks out, actually, pretty well from them. The marsh willow herb. This one's related to fireweed. I love these ones, actually. This is the small forget-me-not. This is one of our native species. They're very, very small. This, I don't remember where in Spaniards Bay I found these, but this is under a hand lens, and I'm really surprised how clear this turned out. If I had to describe the size of the flower, I'd say about the top of a pencil eraser, actually. Very tiny, if not smaller. Here's some pearly everlastings. These are a very, very common roadside weed and in any other disturbed soils, but they're actually native, which is very surprising, considering how well they take over disturbed areas, typical of other weeds. But I welcome them. This is the purple-stemmed angelica. I went back, actually, to that sandbar where I found the Vicia last year, that vetch, and I didn't notice him at first because he wasn't blooming, of course. This is really, really tall, actually. This is one of the plants I had to walk through to get there. I'd say this was about 7 feet tall, honestly. It like towered right above my 6-foot self. And it's really pink, these flowers. I like that, too. On the same sandbar near the brackish water were some of these, the marsh skullcaps. These are in the mint family. They're not edible or anything, nor do they have a neat smell, but they are pretty. Also, we have some of the marsh woundwort. These flowers, I find they look very orchid-like, especially compared to the last one, the dragon's mouth. These purple spots and whiteness on the back. It's very interesting. This species, I love this species. It's pretty, very pretty. Unfortunately, though, it's not native, despite what I thought previously. This is the hedge bindweed, but it's the pink format of it. This one prefers coastal areas, and it doesn't grow near as aggressive as the white form. It does creep out, though, but still very pretty. And in that same sandbar near the brackish water area, we have some marsh cinquefoil. This isn't too common, I don't find, but usually when you find it, it's near the coast in some brackish water. These were growing everywhere too on the sandbar. These are another thing that persisted. Just like the stonecrop from the Spaniards Bay, these were all over the beach. I'd fashioned that these are an introduction from birds or something, but most of them look just like this one, actually. This is the spurred gentian. I've only seen this plant one time, and this is in Spaniards Bay. Very inconspicuous. I don't know how tall it is, but I wouldn't say, we'll go back to the pop can comparison, about half the size of that again. Very pretty, very hard to get a picture of, I found, especially the left one here. This one is the part that's more in focus. Here's some black knapweed. This is another common weed. This one's very showy, though, this time. I don't know if it's double flowered or what. Now, someone pointed out to me that it could be the brown knapweed, but I don't think it is because these ray flowers here on the outside, they don't really look like the typical brown knapweeds. This is another one that the same spot I found the sea blade and the stonecrop. This popped up. The sea glasswort. This apparently is edible, and it's also in the spinach family, but I don't know if I'd try it. On the left, I don't know what these structures here are circling here. They look like they could be inflorescence or something, but that's just my guess. Here's some purple crown vetch. I only seen this one too, and in one spot. That's on the beach in Spaniards Bay, just before Bay Roberts. It's a tiny little patch, but it's still full of flowers, as you can see here. It's not really taking over, I wouldn't say, but it's definitely growing well. Here's some Joe Pye weed. This one's a very common, very favorite of mine, actually, wetland species. And in this spot, I found it, going back to what I call the valley. They're everywhere, absolutely everywhere. This is a lighter shade, actually, too. Among the flowers I saw everywhere, again, out there, there were about 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most, of these lighter shaded flower plants. As you can see, they are indeed growing everywhere. Now they're also very tall. I'd say about 6 feet tall, because most of them were on par with my height, and most of them grew up above too. You can see there's a bit of difference in them. They really are everywhere. Very pretty sight you can see from far away. Now here we go. I went on a trip actually to Witless Bay Line on the 8th of August. Where I was, it was actually quite similar to Hawk Hills in the higher areas. But down here I'm more in the boggy areas. This is the Newfoundland dwarf birch, which at first I thought what I had in the bog of orchids from Harbor Grace, but seeing him as much different made me question the difference. Now here's a comparison between the two actually. The bottom one here is the dwarf birch from the previous picture. This top one is the one I've seen before that I'm not sure of. Again, I'll have to go and look at him some more and try to get a solid ID on him. But next we found some more diapens. Yeah, that was cool to see a familiar face here. These are the capsules. They're starting to develop now. I'd say by now, obviously, they're well done. Here's some heather. This is a common introduction. You'd see a lot in St. John's too, around people's gardens. These are usually around the telephone poles in this area I've found. That makes sense considering the construction, this, that, and everything that goes on. But I've seen them in a couple other places that are pretty weird, like in the middle of the woods. Don't know how they got there, but still, they're very pretty to see. And this is, I'd say white fireweed, but it's more or less a very pale lilac-y color. This stuck out actually like a sore thumb. I'm surprised I did see it considering I was driving up the road, but I had to turn around to go see it. This is in a place called Mobile or Mobile, I'm not sure. It's on the the eastern part of the Avalon towards like the dead center of the top and the bottom of it. Not really sure, it's a smaller town. Here's the arrow leaf tear thumb. This is a very small relative to lady's thumb, actually, another common garden weed. These are very small, hence being under the hand lens. But one thing I wish I had a picture of, actually, is you can see there's barbs that go down the stem. Not necessarily barbs, but really stiff hairs. You can feel them when you rub your hands up or down. You feel very bristly hairs. These I found in the exact same spot as that the tear thumb, actually. These are bull thistle seeds. I just thought it was really cool the way they're sticking out, almost uniform, held together by their little puffs. This is the mare's tail. This one is also cool. Never seen him before at all. He was sticking out. I thought it was just one of the horse tails, which I suppose makes sense, the same. Anyhow, he was in the wetter area. I went up to him, and there it was. This little interesting species. I don't remember what he's related to, actually. I think he's in the plantain family. I could be wrong. Here's some goldenrod. Some of these are starting to bloom still now, actually. You might still see a lot of these. But when these started blooming, it was really nice to see all these little yellow puffs sticking up everywhere. Here's the grass leaf goldenrod. He's a native species. Here's the spotted jewelweed. This is in Harbor Grace. I've only seen this plant 2 or 3 spots, this being one of them. This is down the boardwalk by the plane and the Kyle. They're right on the side, you can see them. Here's some toadflax. Here's an interesting comparison. On the left is the common yellow toadflax, also known as butter and eggs. On the right, we have a striped toadflax. I think I covered this before in the last slide, but I'll just briefly go over it again. In the middle, you see you have a hybrid toadflax. This is a good example, I find, because you can see it's very representative of both parents on the left and the right. It takes the shape from the yellow toadflax and the stripes clearly from the striped one. And on the next slide, here's a couple different ones. These are mostly from around my house, actually. A couple of these two here, they have no stripes at all. They're really short. This one's pretty stubby. And this one is from the last slide, too. Next, we have the purple stem aster. This is very common in roadsides, and there's, again, a lot of these still blooming today. I plan to get some seeds off these, actually. A lot of them are starting to go to seed, too. And here's the New York aster. There's a way to tell these apart despite their almost identical appearance. And if you look at these leaves, right here on this red circle, they're almost semi-succulent. That's a key trait. And also, you can't see it in the picture, but if you rub your finger smoothly against the edge, you'll feel a slight tooth edge to it, which you won't feel in the purple stem. These ones prefer more coastal areas too. Very common in my area. This is a very familiar plant, the creeping water plantain. I visited Bristol's Hope a couple times this year. The first time was in the 29th of July. I seen it just one flower, just one. Then back again on the 26th, there were about 3. Very dry year, so that's why I blame this on. But they're still there. At least I got a chance to see them. Now here's the flat top white aster. This is another native species. Very common in roadsides and other disturbed areas, I find. They get pretty tall actually too. These ones are about average size, I'll say 4 to 5 feet. But some of them have gotten pretty towering over me too, which is unique. This is a unique picture too, actually. There's a lot of flora going on in here. You see there's an obvious fern on the bottom. This is selfie actually, that flower that had an orchid-like flower. On the left we have a hawkweed. I'm positive that's what that is. Some dead leaves, some grass, and liverworts actually. These are pretty cool. I don't have much info on them because I don't know much, but they're a non-vascular plant. On the left, this I think is the royal fern, a very, very young one at that. And in that same spot, we have some of these. These are the bittersweet nightshades. These are true botanical berries, and they're related to peppers and tomatoes. Unlike peppers and tomatoes, though, they're not edible. It's disputed the toxicity rather, of these. Some say they're as bad as bittersweet or deadly nightshades. Some say, nah. They're not poisonous, though, but obviously don't eat them. But what is cool, like tomatoes and peppers, you'll see they start off green, then they'll slowly ripen to yellow, then orange, and then into these deep, bright, shiny red fruits here. Which is really interesting. If I was a bird, that would stick right out. This is interesting here. I think this is meadowsweet, actually, but I could be wrong. It's diseased, or it's got something strange going on with it, as you can see, because I don't really know. It's never looked like that. Here's an evening primrose. This was open far from the evening, actually in the afternoon. I do see them open in the evening, but a lot of them I see open during the afternoon too. So when I see them, I get lucky to take a pic and snap. I like to call these ones shamrocks, actually, because there's a house plant. It's in the same genus as this one, oxalis, that they call the shamrock. So that's just my affectionate term for them. This is the yellow wood sorrel. This is growing on a rocky, pebbly path behind my house. And again, this is the only spot I've seen this little one. So hopefully it can hold up to all the people that walk and ride their quads down it. No hope though, fingers crossed. This, I believe, is a fern moss, or at least it looks like one. Haven't seen this one too often, and when I have, it's in pretty much wetter areas. Must be a correlation somewhere to that. And now, autumn is here, and so are some pretty colors. We're nearing the end, though, as the season comes to an end, hence the fall, unfortunately. But first, I think these are really pretty, actually. This is the shining rose again. They're starting to take on their fall colors, especially during the golden hour. I went out during that time and tried to get as many pictures as I can of various fall flora and foliage, and these two really stuck out. These I felt I had to include. These are the cinnamon fern. This isn't the best picture looking at it now after it being blown up, but these are one of the first things I noticed turn their color, turn brown and golden in the fall, especially when you see them sticking out of every other shrub. These ones are, again, during that golden hour, I call it. They really highlight. This one's the Labrador tea on the left. These aren't the best specimens, but they give you a good idea of the pictures that come with them. Or the colors, sorry. Very bright red on the left. And on the right, we have the raspberry. Very normal looking, but very red, very pretty all the same. I like any kind of fall foliage, to be honest with you. On the left is some more meadowsweet. This one obviously is not mutated. It's very pretty. It looks like some more damage than it does fall colors, but both of them going on. Very pretty. On the right, some fireweed. This one's pretty tall, actually. This was in an old abandoned homestead of all places. There seems to be common growing there because there's no problem taking over. Very bright red, though, so I had to include him. And this is it's about it for fall picks, honestly, to be honest with you here. This is the blueberry bush, and fortunately, I got too late to getting the berries. Never got my berries this year, but I still got a lot of pictures of them. Now that's it for pretty much the fall colors. This is interesting on the left. We have a birch leaf. It's almost skeletonized. I'm not sure what caused that, but I would say it's just insect damage. Excuse me. On the right's the rabbit foot clover. This was taken on the same day as what I call the golden hour. They really stick out in the sunlight, especially these ones in the back here. This is about the last thing I seen, honestly, this year. These are the ghost pipes, well past their prime. There were a lot in this area. This is usually when I start switching gears and focus on foraging for edible mushrooms. I don't know many about them. I just know the winter and the golden chanterelles. But there were these everywhere. Apparently these are a good sign that you're going to find some, but never did see any accompanying these, so I don't know. I think it's a lie. Now, as both the season and the slideshow come to an end, while the fall colors set in, there's still floral beauties out there, such as these beautiful red clovers. Again, during the golden hour on the 4th. Oh, that caption is wrong. But either way, the sun, beautiful, shining right through them. And on the right, it's not bloomed all the way yet, but it still looks pretty. A very interesting geometric / fractal appearance, which you notice a lot in nature. As the wildflower season comes to a close, we can reflect upon what we've seen this year, from the early blooming willows to the fading colors of the foliage. Much has come and gone with the flowers, having given us the opportunity to witness their greatness this season. Whether short-lived or long-lasting, there's so much to see out there. To think these are only from the Avalon Peninsula, you could just imagine what else grows wild in our province, both on the island and in Labrador. I've come across plenty of flora and other exciting sightings this year, and I'm only too pleased to share them with people, especially this wonderful group. I hope the photos shown here were a great reflection of the season past and were enjoyed by all. Let's look forward to 2025 and see what mysteries and miracles we can all find. Thank you for joining me on this year's floral adventure. And that's it for the slideshow, folks. Thank you very much for joining. I'm going to stop the share here so I don't.
Matt. Sure. Thank you, Matt. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
If we were here in person, you'd be hearing us applaud right now.
Thank you
because
so
it's
much.
been so wonderful. Just to feel like I've been through the year again.
I know. I love going through it for that very reason.
And your photos are so gorgeous.
Thank you
Anyway,
so much.
Let's see if anyone else has a comment or a question.
Yes,
for
I'm
you.
open to any comments and questions.
Of course, folks, you'd have to unmute yourselves.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know who.
Matt, I wanted to congratulate you on your find, the tiny vetch.
Thank
Wow.
you very much. I'm really
Quite
proud of that,
remarkable.
actually.
Yeah, I have to say, well, I
Thank
look
you,
at your
Judy.
images and I'm always excited how you show flowers so differently. Like the orange hawkweed was gorgeous. I've never seen
Thank
it
you.
close up. And even the green in the bunchberry, I've never, of all the
Right?
times, I've never seen that green look to where it
Right,
turns
it's the
white.
tiniest little things you notice. When you get up close, I find is when you really notice all of it.
Yeah, and even your violas, the
Yes.
beautiful snaps of them.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. It's
Thank you.
beautiful.
Those
Thank
are one of the best pictures I've taken, actually, of all the 5 or 6 years I've been looking at them. Very impressed with how they turned out.
Mm.
And your pearly everlasting. It was gorgeous.
Yes, that one too. Thank you very much.
Gorgeous.
Oh,
Gorgeous.
it's gorgeous, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. I'm reading the comments here. Thank you. Thank you.
It is like a
Thank
new
you,
way
Anne.
of looking at the flowers. Really, when you see them that close up, you see things you never
You really
even
do. It's
imagined.
absolutely
You
true.
know? Yeah, it's
Mm.
wonderful.
Thank
It
you.
was
Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Mm.
My
You're
pleasure.
welcome.
Matt, would you be able
Mm.
to tell us the story about the tiny vetch? Like, how did you end up sending it to the herbarium?
Absolutely. Well, I'll start off by saying I just found it out of the blue, doing my usual wildflower encounters. But I took pictures of it because I thought, okay, it looks different. But then I saw the flowers. Okay, this is definitely different. So I compare it. I use Google Lens, honestly. I'll just tell you honestly, I cheated with that one there. And it said that identity. So I went on Sue's website, no listing for it. Anything else that was in the Vicia genus and anything else in the bean family, actually, nothing resembled it. So I posted it in the wildflower group. I had Sue, Howard, and a couple of other eggheads, no offense, of course, very intelligent people, help me identify it. They both recommended that I take some specimens and send it off. So what I did there, I took a bunch of plants, not enough to basically harm the population, of course, obviously, But I took them home, dry them out slowly, and casually lay them out gently, very precariously too, on a piece of paper. Let them dry a bit, and then press it with a bit of weight on top of it. I had this pressed for about 2 or 3 weeks before I sent it in, honestly, and probably a lot drier before then. But basically what I did, I asked Sue where I should send it. She said, oh, you send it to the University of Montreal, the herbarium. Luc Bruyette will take care of that for you. So I got a hold of him. Sue gave me his details. I messaged him about it, typed up some info, but he said, wow, Matt, that's very interesting. So I'm going to have to update the database with that. I thought that was cool. So basically, to send the specimen in, I took these sheets of cardboard just to keep it rigid and pressed, and I used not tape, but pieces of paper taped onto the paper without touching the plant itself. And then I just stuck that in a bubble mailer and sent it right off. He had no problem getting it. He said the specimens turned out fine.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing. You
Oh,
cut
my
out for
pleasure.
a bit, so I'll go back and listen to the recording for a bit.
Oh, what was that you missed? Sorry, I could repeat.
Oh, just you said they asked or they suggested that you send off the specimen.
Yes.
And then I didn't get anything until bubble mail.
Oh, sorry. No, they suggested I send it off to the herbarium at the University of Montreal. So I did that. It was easy to prepare to send, actually. I just put it in some cardboard sheets and then into the bubble mailer.
So why Montreal? Sorry, my last question.
Oh, I'm not sure. I think that's where the herbarium is. I know Luke, who works there, he's in charge of the Levesque, which is essentially the database of all of Canada's plants. So I'd say there's the connection. Him working there has something to do with it. Probably easier to get it to him that way, actually.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you too, Paul and Diane. Just reading the comments here. Thank you very much.
We enjoyed it very much.
Thank you kindly.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Mhm.
It ran a lot shorter actually than I thought it was going to. That's not bad.
One thing I noticed was how well you used damp and rain that we had for such a while to make
Yes.
things look so beautiful.
I tried to be
Yes.
nice about it. Just trust me, I could go on about the rain.
Yeah, but you can't fight it, so you might
No,
as well
that-
utilize it, you know?
That's true. We can only do with what we got, and nothing we can do with the rain.
Mm.
Well, Matt, your picture of the Hawk Hills, you know, that dense fog.
Oh yeah.
But the images were beautiful.
Thank you very much. There was a lot to sort through, actually. A lot of blurry ones. Between my lens and my camera getting full of droplets, I had to wipe it on my shirt so often. I swear I was soaking by the time I got out there. But it was very fun. I had a great time.
I think that the moisture on the flowers makes them, I don't know, they just stand out.
It does, actually. You're right. It like polishes them up almost, makes them shiny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very
Lovely.
interesting compliment to the flowers.
Sure is, and you captured it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I'm only too happy to answer any more questions or comments, etc.
Would you like to lead a trip out there? I mean, if we could get people next summer to, or sometime in summer, in the better weather, to come out, you could show us some of your spots.
I would love to,
Yeah.
actually. I gotta
Yeah.
go through. See, a lot of them are really hard to get to, which sucks
Uh-huh.
because there's that valley place I was telling you about. I
Yeah.
swear, like, it's this level and then it's this steep of a quad ride to get down there. Like, there's no way you can walk down there.
Okay.
But there are a lot
Well,
of other places I could go. Very easily
Yeah.
accessible too.
Sure.
And I'd
Yeah.
love to take a bunch of people out.
A day trip, maybe.
Absolutely, yes, that would be
from
awesome.
St. John's and anybody around.
Up
Yeah,
around
if I had
the
$1
boat.
million, rent a bus, go all over the Avalon. That'd be the tour of a lifetime.
Well, we used to have week-long field trips, but we
Oh,
just,
really?
Yeah.
oh yeah, but hate to say it, but we got a little bit older. Well, no,
I
it's a good
suppose,
thing
eh?
that we got older. The lucky
I
ones
know,
get
eh?
older.
That's what I'm trying to do as best I can, enjoy as much of it as I can while I still can,
Sure,
right?
good good plan.
Yeah.
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 John, it's so nice to see a young person involved in plants the way you are. Do you know of any other people who are your age or young people who are involved in studying?
There's a couple people that are in the wildflower group. I don't know personally if they're really into the academic part of it more so than the aesthetic of the wildflowers. But there are a couple people my age that have interest in it, yes. But it
And
seems
have
to
you
be
done-
few.
Have you done any work with school children?
School children, no, I haven't. That being said, I never really offered to do any help or anything of the sorts.
You'd be great, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to say, I know Megan isn't that old either.
Oh, true, true.
You're,
I
you're
was gonna-
definitely a young person.
Oh, there we go then.
Young-ish.
We
I
like
haven't
having
been
you.
feeling very young lately.
Oh my.
Thank you, Heather.
And the rest of us are young at heart, right?
Exactly.
Oh,
Sure.
that we are.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, I'd like to thank you again and thank everybody for coming. And I guess
Thank
in
you
a,
once
a
again.
month's time, we'll be, Carm, do you know who is up?
Next
Coming-
month is Sue Meads, and I think she's
Sue.
taking us back to the Limestone Barrens.
Okay.
So I don't have the
excellent.
title yet, but yeah.
That's
so-
interesting.
Great.
And
Good
Michael
to
and
see that one.
Anne will be showing either their trip to Portugal or Azores, either or, and then in the new year they'll show either the part 2 or whatever.
Oh,
So
they'll both be nice. I know that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for
Thank you.
coming, and
Yeah.
thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much. My
Super.
utmost
Thank you.
pleasure.
Okay.
Really
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
Everybody.
Really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. My
Bye.
pleasure.
Thank you, Matt. It's
Bye.
fabulous.
Ah,
We have a little
Take
thank
care.
you in the mail coming. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you very
you.
much. Thank you for your thank you.
you're so welcome.
Thanks,
I really
Karen.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
Well,
Karen. Good
yeah.
night.
Night.
Thank you,
Night.
Karen.